in a devastating like parallel strike, the two most evil regimes on earth, Israel and Russia, have been dealt savage blows near simultaneously. A massive combined drone strike has hit a Moscow refinery, penetrating deep into Russian airspace, and has lit them ablaze. Huge, 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 huge dub. The funniest thing I've seen, and I've seen like a million fucking videos on this. Look at this. They struck an oil refinery in Moscow and perfectly busted the cap on the oil tank. Look at this. Look at that. That cap is like 100 feet wide or something. That's huge. Top of the cork, man. I see nothing but horrors. Listen, man, Russia is basically just cold Israel, and Israel is just warm Russia, okay? Once you see the code in the Matrix the way I do, you realize. New Russian space program. A lot of Israelis are from Russia. Yeah, genuinely. Like a huge number of them. About 20% of the total Israeli population is made up of Russian speakers. Not Russian nationals necessarily, but Russian speakers. It's like a huge number. Putin once made a joke about Israel being a Russian-speaking nation, Lamau. So Israel's Russian California? That's not a bad way of thinking about it. You've been missing all the action. Ukraine's been using Starlink-connected drones to wipe out large numbers of air defense systems, leaving Moscow open. Thank you, Elon. Fuel shortages being reported across Russia by local government? Yes. Unable to meet domestic military and civilian demand, let alone export for money? Yes! Is it finally happening? It's a great day, man. Iran wins. The great Satans, Russia, Israel, and America defeated. Fuel supply bottlenecks are tightening in Russia after Ukraine drone strikes and oil refineries led to fuel disruptions in several regions. This could just be the beginning. Pressure on the fuel market expected to increase in the coming months. Some fuel stations have imposed restrictions or halted gasoline sales entirely. Occupied Crimea situation is particularly tense. Fuel shortages ensured after recent drone strikes have disrupted traffic along the so-called Novorossiya Highway, which links the peninsula to Russia's Rostov region and serves as key supply route for fuel. Oh, man. Injected straight into my
fuel
fucking
restrictions
veins,
in Crimea have been causing long queues for more than a week. Now the knock-on effects are being felt more broadly, with literal signs of food shortages. This one says more sugar is on its way, and some residents say food rationing is already happening.
They told us in the food store in Sevastopol that we can only buy 3 packs of noodles per person, but there aren't any.
Friendly reminder, Ukraine's made it illegal to criticize Israel. Remember that Ukraine's deference to Israel is because they rely heavily on Western support and are desperately, pathetically trying to avoid inflaming tensions. I guarantee you that Ukraine is going to change their tune once they realize the Western world no longer requires everyone be subservient to Israel. It's realpolitik. It's not like a genuine desire on their part to bend the knee. The real pressure to bend the knee comes primarily from Israel itself, America, and Germany. Like, Ukraine is in a desperate war for survival, trying to fight against like the actual total destruction of their nation. But they're not the source of this. They are not like the root cause of Zionist sentiment here. That being said, like, yeah, no, I'm not saying Ukraine's government is perfect, because it's not. But like, it's Russia and Israel, man. About as bad as it gets.
Bans in the suburb where I live.
Supply chains are being disrupted by Ukraine's almost daily strikes on Russian oil infrastructure. Moscow has acknowledged that's causing problems for Crimea.
Measures are being taken to ensure that this issue doesn't get any worse. Our Ministry of Energy is currently working on it. There are indeed certain problems, and a comprehensive set of measures is being developed to address the situation.
Nuts, I believe they're referring to the fact that a Russian air defense missile struck their own oil depot. I disagree with Vosh on this. It's not so black and white. I'm not saying it's black and white. When I say Ukraine's not perfect, that's me saying it's not black and white. I have never at any point said Ukraine is white. to carry your analogy. It's just that Russia and Israel are incredibly fucking evil. They're super, super, super evil. And unlike America, Israel and Russia are like totally committed to this project. America has been for several years now, but I think, and maybe, you know what, maybe you'll accuse me of a bit of chauvinism here. I think that there is a version of America that is not evil. I think that America has enough of an internal, like, domestic, cultural, social weight that is separate from its Zionist and colonial ambitions that you could theoretically have in America that is in many respects very similar to the one that exists right now, but is not fundamentally evil. Israel is built on blood and war. Like, Israel, down to its root, is committed to this. Russia, not so much, but their government, yes, because they're not a democracy, right? Like, in order for Russia to not be what they are, you would need more fundamental changes, I think, than America would. In order for Israel to not be what they are, they would need, like, basically pulled from the root up, man. Israel's so fucked. Israel needs to be forced to not be what they are. But, you know, pardon me for my limitless optimism. I think there's a version of America that can pull it through. Will we live in that version? Probably not, no. But theoretically. Moscow covered by a black cloud. Yes, of course, God is punishing them for their evil. Oil rain being reported in some parts of the city. Yeesh. Like the music. I'm biased, obviously, but I think you're over-equating Israel and Russia. Israel's government and Russia's government act very similarly, from their constant posturing to their militarism, to their expansionist ambitions, to their weaponization of ethno-nationalism, to their constant dishonesty and their government-fueled propaganda departments. The difference, of course, is that Israel is culturally committed to this, whereas most Russians are like, they support Putin as a strongman, but I think that the average Russian is a lot more disconnected from the war effort than the average Israeli. It obviously depends on where in Russia you are. I think that Israel is a lot more ideologically fascistic, even though in practice they're both probably operating at about the same level of, well, at least on a militarism front. It's complicated. Anytime you're making a broad generalization like X country is like Y, you're putting yourself in a position where any level of like specificity is going to lead to the differences cropping up. By and large, I think that Russia and Israel are both acting on the same underlying motivations. I think that Israel, though, Israel's definitely more dangerous because Israel's being backed by a legitimate death cult, like an ethno-nationalist suicide death cult. But Russia is mostly just oligarchs trying to make the most what they can. They both threaten posture nukes, but I don't think Russia would use them. I think Israel might. So, yeah, there's a big difference between like a fervent, militarized, zealous fascist state and like a state where you just live under a shit authoritarian government that you like, you know, maybe you support, maybe you don't, but you're just kind of resigned to the drudgery of your miserable Russian existence. I don't know. It's a generalization. What matters is that Russia and Israel are losing. I heard most Russians gave up on politics/democracy. Well, they've literally never lived under a democracy. So, you know, they get a little bit of plausible deniability for that. They never had the opportunity to build up a democratic civil society. Israel has been nominally democratic for its entire existence, and they still pivoted in this direction. The average Chinese probably has more sense of civic-mindedness than the average Russian at this point. 100%. Absolutely. Easily, yeah. I would probably wager a bet that the population of Russia is like the most apathetic in the world, or very high up there. Yeah, 100%. Like, they were, for a time, a superpower, but they have never tasted democracy. Like, they have been the most failed by politics. Not because they have been oppressed by stronger nations. The Soviet Union was very strong. It's because they've just collapsed and failed and failed. If I was Russian, I probably wouldn't believe in politics either. More than Egypt and the Middle East? Oh my God, yes, absolutely. There was a moment when it could have been, but Yeltsin? Yeah, there was a moment, but it could have been, but the fucking shock doctrine. Iran could have been democratic too. Overwhelming majority of Iranians favor democratic governance in Iran. 89%, god damn. But they do like having a strong leader who doesn't have to bother with parliament and elections. I mean, that's the dichotomy. Vosh, so Russia is what you fear America might become based on you talking about apathy death? Yeah, 100%. They're like my model for it. Russia is what I think of in my head when I imagine a country that has been so beaten and beleaguered by oligarchs and capital acquisition and inequality, and it doesn't matter who we vote for, the outcome's always the same. That's like that's what I imagine. And now it's a desolate wasteland ruled by pedophiles and billionaires It's like the end state. It's one possible stable end state of capitalism, which is that you don't even have the zealous self-destruction of overt zealous fascism because the people are too disengaged to even be zealous. You just have like a permanent wasteland, permanent death of civil society. People just drink themselves to death and do nothing. People will stop forming relationships, stop breeding, and the country just slowly rots and withers and dies. I think that a lot of the West is on this path currently. We're not quite as far along as Russia, but that Russia is what I imagine when I think of that. Yeah, they are the country that I most imagine. It's worth remembering that, like, nah, too sophomoric. Too sophomoric. We'll get there. I always wonder what the fuck is going on in Eastern Russia. Alcoholism and wolves, I assume? Say it, pussy? Okay, sure. If you've played the hit video game Disco Elysium, the political disenfranchisement, apathy, and disregard of the population of Revachol is modeled off of the post-Soviet Eastern Bloc. Like, if you're wondering what motivates it or like where that comes from, you know, the difference being, I think the attitude is very different in Soviet-occupied states like Poland or the Baltic states or whatever versus Russia itself. Remember that every nation that was occupied by the Soviet Union had like a narrative that they might be able to spread their wings were they not living under repressive Soviet rule. But Russia itself doesn't have that narrative. Like, Russia can't say, oh, now we finally get to do democracy now that we're in charge. They were always in charge, hence apathy. That's what's going to happen in America, man. We've always been in charge of America. We've never been ruled by anyone else. America's never been ruled by the UN or ruled by Israel. We've always had a choice. We just kept making the wrong ones. And now it doesn't matter, and the outcome remains the same no matter who you vote for or don't vote for. Democracy happened, and it didn't change anything. That's the great apathy death. It depends. There are regions like Tatarstan that see Russian rule as foreign rule. That's true. Yes. No, you're correct. Yes. Russia is an empire. All right.